Hello, I am Jen Dalton and I am the owner of Jigsaw Dance, and I'm really excited to be here today to share my story and tell you where it all started to where I am now 30 years down the track. So I grew up dancing and I started at 2.5. My auntie owned a dance studio and this is where I grew up, and it was everything I loved. I didn't play any other sports. Dance was my life. And at 13, my auntie asked if I would assist in one of her classes, and of course I said yes, and I loved every minute of it. And one of the girls in that class, her mum asked if I could take her daughter for some extra classes at her house. And of course I was super excited and said yes, and it was okay with my auntie. I did check with her. And so I started teaching this girl classes in her parents' garage. And then within a couple of weeks, she said, "Oh, I've got a couple of friends, do you mind if they come and join?" And I said, "Of course, that would be fine." And so once a week I would go over and the 3 girls and I would have lessons. And that year we did a little concert on their back deck, and we had a sausage sizzle and their parents were there. And it was essentially my first dance concert that I put on. Word spread at school, and then there were another 12. And so there were 12 dancing, and then we actually moved into my parents' garage, so they cleared it all out. And then had this couple of days a week, had these girls come over, and we were, learning dances. And by the end of that year, we had another concert just at one of the little primary schools. And then really it just evolved from there. So over the next 4 or 5 years, I was still at school, but the studio grew. I actually feel very lucky to have been in that situation. So by the time that I finished year 12, I had a business. And so it was never planned that this was what I was going to do, but it was something that I loved, and yeah, it just became Jigsaw Dance. And how I came to the name Jigsaw Dance is quite an interesting story, because I wanted to register a business name and I didn't really know what to call it, and I didn't want to call it my name. And so I was with my mum and dad and we were going through the thesaurus and we're looking at different words, and my initials were JD. So we thought, well, let's look for a word that starts with J. And so going through, then my dad's found Jigsaw, and he said, well, this is a really appropriate name because it's putting the pieces together of children to become whole, which is what my idea of teaching kids. It was more than dance. I wanted to teach them confidence, and I wanted them to make friends. I wanted to be more than just learning steps. So once I finished school, I had my business. It was going really well. I was loving it, but I got to a point where I was at about 20 and I felt like I needed to do more. And I loved the studio and I didn't want to get rid of it. But it was at that point that I thought I might do some study as well as the teaching. And I decided that, I loved helping people, and so why not join the police? And so I did some study and got through the academy. All the time I had my cousin, she was coming in and actually teaching my classes for me at the time where I was studying in Goulburn. And even when I very first started, I was doing shift work. And so she was pretty much teaching all the classes and I was just there when I could be there. And that worked really well. I also actually met my husband while I was in the police, very early on in the police as well. And so he at that point then became part of the studio as well. So he became part of my support tech team because he was naturally gifted with that side of things as well. So this was happening, and as we got married very soon after, started our family pretty soon after as well. And that was always part of the reason that I wanted to keep the studio, because I knew it would be convenient with a family, so I could still teach in the afternoons but look after my babies in the day. And so that was a good reason to keep everything going and balanced. And I had great support around me from both my family, my husband's family, as well as just 1 or 2 staff members. At that point it was still pretty much me and my cousin were doing it at that time. But it was then when I just felt like I wanted to expand. I started by bringing on a couple of extra teachers, which was very hard at first, because having to, trust someone to run my classes, I found that hard, but I knew it was just the way that I needed to expand. And I also had some help with some admin as well. So that then started. So that was from one studio we had, which was at the Recreation Centre, just in Kellyville. We then expanded, and in the end, we're in 6 different locations. And at our highest point, we had about 1,200 students. And it was really a really exciting time, but it pushed me and challenged me to really build a team, as well as continue to give to the students and my teachers everything that I wanted. So it was really important for me to keep the quality of that up as well. And so that was that point that my husband and I had a discussion, and we realised that we needed a really solid support, and that's when we approached my mum and said, would you be willing to leave her full-time job and come and work in the business? And she did, and it changed the trajectory of the business, because it enabled me to be able to just focus on the teaching, the children, managing that side of it. And then my mum actually took on the finance and the admin stuff that and the costuming, which I'm not naturally good at. So she really complimented me. But there was so much more to having my mum there, because the support is unwavering. We could bounce ideas off each other. It was a safe place. Obviously, all information was confidential, so I could completely trust her. There were just never, and still aren't, any issues with that, which is really priceless. And then down the track, my eldest daughter, she just loved dancing. I always said I'd never make my kids dance if they didn't want to. And my eldest always loved it and was very good at it. My youngest, no, she didn't. She wasn't interested. She dances for a couple of years, but she's my sporty kid. She does the athletics and the swimming, and so that's where she thrives there. So, but my eldest daughter, who's also naturally gifted with leadership, she, from a very early age, started assistant teaching, and a couple of years ago took on some of the senior teaching roles as well. And so not only is she a creative, she's also very good with the tech stuff as well. So she actually supports me with a lot of the computer side, admin side, as well as my husband doing a lot of the admin side as well. So together we are, I think, a fabulous team, because we all have our areas of expertise, but together we really just complement and support each other. So I've always said you're only as good as the team you have around you, and I think I've got a special team. Part of the evolution of the studio involved me firstly being very hands-on and in the classroom doing everything, and then over the years I actually stepped back. So I stepped back back from the teaching a little bit. I was focusing a bit more on the business side of it, which I was actually really loving. I love the challenge of that, learning new things that way. And then I found that my passion had moved from teaching the kids in the classroom to actually training my teachers and instilling my knowledge and experience with them, so that they could then replicate what I wanted to teach, how I wanted the kids to be taught in a classroom. And I just found I loved that. And that's when I actually started putting together training programs first of all for my team, because I know how important the team is to my business. And now also at this part, my husband and I actually bought a factory unit, which we fitted out to be our own studio in Castle Hill. And so that is where we finally had our home base that was ours. And so it allowed us and gave us the opportunities to then really expand for me in the teaching and the training side of things. So I feel very blessed about that. And so that's where my passion continued to grow, and I could see my training coming out in my teachers, and that's, you know, such an important part. And that is probably one of our biggest struggles, is finding teachers so that we have the right teacher in our classroom for our kids, because I have made a promise to all of our parents and all of the kids that enter our studio doors that they are going to be included, they're going to feel special, they're going to feel everyone gets to be a star and everyone gets to have a go in the front. That's who we are, that's who we've always been, and it's really important that my teachers give that opportunity and experience as well. And so then that led on to me working more closely with other studio owners and sharing that teacher training and the ideas behind that with their staff. And yeah, so that's where I'm now heading. I do a lot more training and coaching for studio owners now in building their studios, as well as the business side of their studio. So a lot of the creatives that start a dance studio because they love the art and the passion of performing, but if they, you know, to run as a business, there are some things that they might not be aware of, and that's at the moment where I'm really focusing my time and really loving and enjoying sharing that experience. It was always something that was close to my heart, was working with children, and still to be able to give them inspiration, to give them a safe space, to give them somewhere to build confidence and see them shine. I feel so lucky that I've had this opportunity to be able to be making this difference. And we have worked with a huge variety of children over the 30 years we've been going, and it is such a privilege to be able to see them grow. And I now have students that I was teaching are bringing their children and they're learning dance now, because they know the safe environment, the feeling of family when you walk through our doors. They want that for their children, and I mean, that's the biggest compliment for me, that they feel so happy, they have the memories that are so positive that they want to actually give that to their children. So yes, I feel like I'm the lucky one.